My name's Michelle. When you're starting out on research, you have to know what are you getting yourself into. So sometimes you do not get a choice. A teacher tells you you have to write a paper on criminal justice, you have to write a paper on innovative education, you have to write a paper on forestry. But within that topic, you can find something that you care about. So maybe you see this chart here. I have two circles. There's your interests on the side and the topic on the other side. There's a gray area in the middle. That is the sweet spot that you have to choose to write about. For instance, say the topic is innovative education, and we think, okay, this doesn't sound so interesting. What are things that I like? I like TED Talks, I like video games, movies, cooking, this kind of thing. Think, where can this overlap? Could we use video games in education? Could we use cooking in education? Next, know that you're never alone when it comes to writing papers. Everybody has some fear about writing a paper, but you're not alone. You have teachers, you have professors, you have the internet, you have friends. So know that a research paper isn't just one try, one attempt, one fail, one success. It's a process and it takes time. Please know that you can find support so you don't feel alone while you're writing a research paper, whether it's a thesis, article for a journal, or even an op-ed for a newspaper. Research paper requires what? Research. You have to find facts and proof and other articles that help support you in your ideas. How do you do that? Figure out what already exists. What research has been done? We have different places where we can go to find other writings that have been conducted about our topic. And it really depends on your subject. So LexisNexis is usually for law students. Google Scholar, you can find a lot of stuff in there. And then JSTOR is a pretty traditional academic resource. While you're reading these sources, you must make notes. You will be looking at so many different papers and sources and websites and blogs and articles. Your mind is going to become like popcorn. So making notes can help you keep track and stay organized. Good notes, even though it seems like a lot of work, it will actually make your paper writing easier. So when you keep notes, when you're organized, when you have note cards, when you know where the article is, where the information is, while you're writing, you can go back to that if you need clarification, and you can find what you need more easily so that you don't plagiarize. Plagiarizing is very serious. So in academic circles, when you steal someone else's work, when you copy writing without giving credit, you can be punished for this. So your note taking can help you make sure that you're not doing that. When you are taking notes, you can indicate if you are writing your own ideas, if you're quoting direct, or if you're interpreting the information that you see. When you cite someone else's work, you're giving them a namaskar. You're giving them respect because you are acknowledging the time and the energy that they put into their paper writing. When you are making notes, there are different ways that you can do it. All right, so when we're watching Real Madrid, there is someone comment. They're giving a narrative of what is happening in that moment. Oh, Beckham has the ball. He's coming down the left field. He's kicking it into the midfield. That is a commentary. That is something that we can do when we're making notes. Another strategy is a summary. That's kind of like the movie trailer. Instead of watching the 4-hour Hindi serial or Bollywood movie, we're just getting the preview. And that's kind of the summary, the main points, what's the idea here, what's the takeaway. The other way, there's paraphrasing. And paraphrasing is you're reading something and you're thinking, what are the important words? Then you're putting it in your own language. And you're giving the facts and the main point in your own words. So those are all note-taking strategies that you can use to make sure that you're not plagiarizing. So when you cite your research, when you are putting your thesis together and you're thinking of your bibliography or you're thinking of your references, there will be a specific outline or specific format that you have to use to show where you found those things. Now, depending on if you're a humanities student, a science degree, or a history degree, each one has kind of different requirements, and you'll need to know how to format the sources accordingly. So references all have to to be listed, and you will have to talk to your teacher what is the preference for them. So one popular one, it's called MLA, and that stands for Modern Language Association. You can probably see that here. This is traditionally used for literature and humanities subjects. Another common one is called the APA, and that stands for American Psychological Association. This is often used for sciences, so psychology subjects or sociology subjects, and you can find more details there about how to reference sites. Where does the title go? Where does the page number go? How do I write the author's name? It's almost like a common language. This is a way that scientists, no matter where they are in the world, researchers, no matter where they are in the world, they can easily check your writing to see that you did proper research, and they can find and cross-check. So it's not like, I have to do it. It's making readers have an easier time follow your thought pattern, okay? I'm not gonna spend so much time going into that because there are websites where you can see exactly how it's done. I care more that you get the idea of how to do the research. Back to getting organized. When you're writing a good paper, this is key because we have a lot of different parts. It's like directing a movie. You have to do the introduction, you got a body, you got the conclusion, you have the end, and then you have the references. First draft. Don't care about any of that. Get it out on paper. Write fast and furiously, okay? Get all of your ideas out. Remember, your introduction, the very first part of your writing is like your map. If we're driving from Bhutol to Kathmandu and we don't really know which road to take, we're gonna get lost. So your introduction is the map for your readers so they know, where are you going? What are you trying to talk about? What do you want to achieve? How are you going to talk about it? And why do we really want to care? The introduction is where you're grabbing the audience in, you're grabbing the readers into your writing so that they keep going, that they don't just stop. The body of your writing, think of it if you're eating a burger, that's where all the meat and the vegetables and all the juicy stuff is. This is where you provide the evidence to what you're talking about. And you're thinking, can the reader understand what's going on here? You're separating your evidence into paragraphs so it's easy to follow. And again, you're keeping my attention because I think, if this is not organized, why do I want to keep reading? This is like a torture. Your conclusion at the end, this is where you hit it home. This is essential for a strong research paper. The conclusion summarizes everything that you talked about that's important. If you're tired and you think, Miro paper, the deadline is tomorrow, I'm just gonna do this fast, Chito boyo, done. And you don't spend the time that you need on the conclusion, the paper, all of that time is kind of a waste. So even though it's at the end, it's almost the most important part. First draft, done. Guess what you have to do? You have to go back. You have to revise. You have to edit. You have to reread. You have to see, is this good? How can I make it better? How can you do that? Give your paper to someone else to read because you wrote it, so it makes sense to you. It's clear. But can someone else understand it? So pass your paper to a friend, pass your paper to even a parent or a sibling, and ask, does it make sense to them? Then take it back, read it loud. You're probably going to find a mistake. So you want to see, where are those mistakes? Now, thankfully, we have Google Docs, and Google Docs is amazing because you can share a link easily to many people. They can make edits directly on it, and you can choose, do I want to accept it? Is that a good idea? No, reject it. It's up to you. You can print it out. You can use pen and paper, or you can use Google Docs to help you edit, to help revise, to make it better. This is like someone who's working on a sculpture. It takes time. Each time something else comes off and it becomes that person or whatever it is you're making. This takes time. But this is what separates a good writer from a great writer and from a bad writer, right? The more time that you put in, the better your writing will become. When you can find that thing that you're excited about or that brings you joy, or that you're somewhat interested in, then it can make this process feel a little bit easier. Before you turn in your paper, before you defend your paper, before you publish your paper, there are some questions that you should ask yourself. Everything that you mentioned in the introduction, is it covered in your writing? Number two, everything that I've written about, is it relevant? So sometimes we have a really good idea, but it doesn't have to do with the topic that we're talking about. It might be a good idea for another paper, or it could be a different paper entirely, but it doesn't have to do with the paper that you're writing now. And this is a hard part. Is your paper easy to understand, easy to read, and logical? If it's confusing, if you're using a lot of we call jargon, which is very fancy words, fancy terms that maybe someone's not going to understand, you could change that and make it better. Have you cited sources? So this is giving credit to the people who you borrowed ideas from or used for your own research. And then last, does your paper meet any of the requirements given to you by your teacher or your professor or your employer or the research publication? So if your teacher gives you a word count minimum or maximum, you're going to have to check that. If your professor says, I want to see no less than 10 sources, you have to check, did I meet that requirement? Okay, and that's going to be different depending on what you're writing the paper for. What are the things that you're curious about? What are the things that you're excited about? What are the problems that you see? What is something that you wish that you could change? And you also think about your own experience. What is something that you went through that maybe you were confused by or frustrated with or really inspired by? And you can use that to help you fix your topic. I hope that makes sense. Does this apply for essays? Yes, this structure applies for essays. You always want to think about your introduction, your body, and your conclusion. You always want to go through the writing process. You always want to edit. You want to take notes before you begin writing. These are common writing techniques. Whether you're writing a PhD thesis or just a thesis paper for master's, this is a process that is universal. The research, the write, the edit, repeat, introduction, body, conclusion. So this is pretty standard. A proposal and a report, whenever you're writing, you want to think about your intended audience. Who is reading it? Academic writing is usually for people in that field or people coming to read your paper for a reason. An official letter, proposal, or report usually is about giving information or asking for something. So you want to think, who is the end result of this? If you're writing a proposal for a business to try to get money or an investment, that person is probably going to want to see something different than the person who is using your research paper to build a city plan, something like that, right? So you always want to think about the audience.